to another episode of our Life Matters podcast, where we truly believe that God cares about your life, therefore your life matters.
That's right.
To my left, we have Dale, we have John here, and I have an opening question for you guys.
All right.
What is you found in your experience, the easiest way to share bad news?
Ooh, easiest way to share bad. Oh man, I might have to think about this one for a minute. I'm gonna be honest. I don't like giving bad news at all. They say start with a compliment. Start.
I have heard that.
Start with something nice. I guess it depends. Is it bad news that I need to tell somebody, like that it's bad because it affected me badly, or like something in the world happened?
There you go. I like that. Yeah.
So actually, I love that you asked it that way, because that's not the way. Even like as we were getting ready to go out the other day to serve Savannah, we very much we're always like, we're sharing the good news, right? The bad news is a subpart, but like we're sharing the good news. The battle has been won. But I do love that you say that, because it makes my mind go to James. So the book of James, what you see is James. He starts off every time he's about to say something bad to them, he's about to rebuke them. Mm-hmm. He says, brothers and sisters.
That relationship.
Yeah, he's reminding them, like, hey, there's this relationship that we have that is special.
Don't forget that.
And don't forget this, because what I'm about to say is going to make you feel like you're not my brother or sister.
That's good, because I do think that, like, it is easier to receive bad news or important information from somebody that I have a relationship with, somebody that I already trust. Like, if one of you told me, like, rebuked me in a particular way, it would, I'm not saying it wouldn't sting in any way, but it's easier to take in, and I know where it's coming from. So, yeah, I think having that relationship makes a huge difference.
Since you mentioned that, I have...
Let me rebuke you on the podcast. This is not a podcast. Yeah. This is an intervention.
Yeah. Live to you. Okay, so I know this is for our listeners or viewers. We need to talk about, this is why I asked that question. Because we're talking about the topic of evangelism or sharing the gospel. And now when we hear that word gospel, Dale, you kind of already alluded to it. The gospel essentially just means good news.
Yep.
Now, when we share good news, there's also, it's good news to God, because God is the one giving the news, but also to the people who are listening.
Yeah.
Their perception of it may be different, may be viewed differently. Some people may view it as, oh, this is the best news ever. And some people may view it as bad news.
Right.
So today we're going to talk about just practical ways of what it looks like to share the gospel, but also use this episode to kind of get into the experience that you guys had over in Guatemala in the mission trip. Whether we are listening to this episode from the past couple of weeks, or if you listen to it this week, then they just got back from Guatemala. But anyway, just kind of share your experiences with sharing the gospel. Yes, on the trip, but also just kind of give your takeaways of what it looked like. What were your expectations, and then how were the realities of that?
Yeah, I mean, as we're shooting this episode, we did just recently get back, and the number one question that I get, like, I mean, just walking up here earlier, like the number one question I got, I had two people ask me right before we walked in this, how was Guatemala?
Yeah.
And so that's the big question people keep asking, and I say it was exhausting, it was tiring, it was joyful, it was fun, but at the end of the day, like, we saw God work. We saw God work in the people in Guatemala. We saw God work in our team, and so it was very rewarding. I did enjoy getting to catch up on a little bit of sleep after getting back, and I can genuinely say I don't enjoy airports, because that is always the most frustrating part of any of our mission trips, is our experience at airports. But no, it was a great. I mean, I think today we'll get to share some stories about some of the things that God did, people who said yes, people who said no, the believers that we got to meet there, which I think was a really encouraging thing.
Dale, you got supplies here. What's happening? Like, is this just random or?
Yeah. Well, it is random in the sense that it is very much helpful for the conversation, and yet also is the coffee that I brought back from Guatemala, which is hands down some of the best coffee that I've ever had. Now, granted, this coffee isn't the best coffee I had while I was in Guatemala. Strangely enough, the coffee that was the best was the coffee that was in the hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me, it was very much the best coffee.
Well, I was like, was it free?
Yeah. The hotel coffee was free.
Okay,
It was free.
That's why it was missed. Okay.
Well, they're from two different volcanoes, right? So the interesting part about the coffee is they grow them at the base of the volcanoes, kind of like higher elevations, and yet still at the lower end of them. And so the two different coffees were two different volcanoes within reason of each other, but it's interesting just the difference in taste of them.
Okay, so we've been missing volcanoes in America.
That's why we can't grow them.
Okay, yeah.
That's right.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, and Dale's a big coffee guy.
Yeah.
I was excited to get back for my. I do this weird thing. If you're listening, you can't see it. I always put like my plastic cup in a mug so I can carry it around. So this is my weird little.
It's your personal coaster.
That's right. He's got coffee from where we came from. I was like, woohoo, soda.
Tell me, they had no soda over there, John?
They had just not my favorite.
Okay.
Yeah,
They had
my
the Taco
favorite.
Bell, but not the soda.
Yeah,
not the
Baja
Baja
Blast
from
Baja
Taco
Blast.
Bell.
That's I know some people are listening, thinking, man, he's got to get some healthier habits. But yeah, coffee is a big thing. If you don't know, like Guatemala is like real big into coffee. So that was one of the neat experiences. We actually got to go tour a little family coffee farm while we were there. So I got to learn a lot about coffee I didn't know.
And based off of what I learned, I earned the upgraded bag of coffee.
Yeah. He got a fancy bag. Came from like higher up on the volcano,
Yeah, there you go.
and so it's supposed to be even better.
Man, that's good.
So,
That's
yeah.
solid. Okay, so John shared his experience.
Yeah,
What did you experience over there?
Okay, so the first thing, because it's still lingering on my mind, one of the thoughts that I had when you were kind of jumping into this is one of the things I always like to tell people, since we're talking about evangelism, is it comes out of this word, euangelion, which is the Greek word, right? But that part doesn't really matter. What matters is what that word is, and that word was the person that they would send back when they had won a battle to tell people that they had won the battle.
Yeah.
And we're just like, oh, it means good news, and it does. But it's the beauty of running, and you see that throughout the Bible. The feet are beautiful of the one who runs with the gospel. And what they're saying is, man, because you're running to tell of the victory. And so evangelism, if we look at it that way, I think is a lot easier to see as the good news. We're like going to tell of the victory that has been won.
It's good.
And so coming into the experience side, it was just beautiful to get to go over there and tell them of this battle that had been won. And especially because so many of them, it wasn't necessarily that we went assuming that none of them were believers. We knew that some of them were believers, and the majority of them are actually not necessarily unbelievers. They are Catholic in the sense of very much, if I die at the wrong time, my life is over and I'm going to hell.
Yeah.
And so, the good news is that it's not.
Yeah, and I will say, like, within, because there are plenty of believers who are Catholic.
Right.
But especially in Central America, that term doesn't always mean the same thing. And to be fair, we would also have some strong distinctions within theology, things that we believe, especially as it pertains to the interaction of works to faith. But in particular in that area, often there are a lot of other gods who are associated, or other spirits who are associated with, far beyond what an American audience would be familiar with. And
Right.
so when Dale's saying that, he's not suggesting
Right.
that, like, there aren't believers who are Catholic.
Yeah.
But in that area, it is there are often a lot of
Syncretism.
Yes, a lot of syncretism. I think that's the appropriate word. Mergers of religions that it's not really the gospel anymore. It is do these good things or satisfy the spirits in a particular way. And that is one of the things that we would run into.
That sounds like a miracle.
Yeah. It is kind of that, all roads lead to heaven, but generally be a good person and do good things, and then you'll get there.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what we were dealing with, was people, and sometimes just being more blunt and asking that question of like, hey, if you died, would you go to heaven? If so, why? If not, why not? And kind of getting to hear people's answers, which I do appreciate. Also, their culture was one that, culturally we're going to approach it differently depending on what makes sense for people. There, you can be a little bit more upfront, a little bit more, hey, here's what I believe, here's why I believe it, and it's not considered offensive. It's not a point of frustration, even if somebody disagrees with you. That's okay.
You won't be canceled? Oh, wow.
No, yeah.
Okay.
We didn't have to like tiptoe around the truth. No, some people might believe the truth, some people might reject it, but it was okay. Like it's understandable that we might have different perspectives on the same things.
Okay. Dave, you got anything to add to that?
No, I think he summed it up really well. That was exactly where I was trying to get to. So, it was very interesting because when we first got there, they were like, well, everybody wants you here. Everybody wants you to come, and just spend time with them and get to know you.
That's what I told you guys.
And I was like, dude, that's awesome, because this is my people, And it was funny because I got to the first house, because we only got to do one house the first day, Sunday after church. And we got to the first house, and the guy's like, you want me to go get my bucket? And I was like, well, we'd kind of like to get to know you. And he was like...
To be clear, the bucket was, we were delivering water filters. And
I guess we had...
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
So they had, they would provide a bucket. They had a bucket, and then we would connect the water filters, which for them, they don't have the same access to clean water that is good for drinking.
So were they expecting y'all, or?
Yeah, they were
expecting us, yes.
They were, but
okay.
yeah.
So you're not just going up $9,000.
No. We would go with the church.
Mm-hmm.
Local church would already have talked to them, set it up, and then we would go into it and get the opportunity to then either share the gospel with them or encourage them, depending on whether they were believers or not.
And most people were very excited to get access to clean water.
Most people, so everybody was excited about getting access to the clean water. It was funny though, because he was like, "Hey, you want to go get my bucket?" He wanted the clean water, and I was like, "Well, we'd like to get to know you." And he was like, "How long is this going to take?"
Dale's ready to get kicked out.
And I was like,
you're in sales, huh?
The whole time we were coming here, I told everybody, I was like, forget what time is. And the first thing he's like is, how much time is this going to take?
Wow. Yeah.
God stretched it.
Yeah.
Stretched it.
Wow.
It was really neat. I mean, my initial experience was like the second day when we had kind of a full day to like go share faith. There were a lot of challenges. So you're working with translators, so you're very dependent on knowing what's going on to like working through your translator. We had a lot of confusion on our first day. In fact, I kind of came away from the first day, and I think this is important. When we go to share the gospel, there are going to be days where you feel disappointed. You feel like you're not effective. You feel like, and it was actually some of the people on my team who had to say like, hey, like here's some things you didn't notice. Like there was one house in particular that I was like, man, like I just feel like it didn't go the way I was hoping to. And somebody on my team was like, did you notice after the house the way, like when we were leaving the house, the lady that we had talked to, how joyful she was. She started talking with some of the church members that we had been working with. And so it was seeing some things that I didn't see, and the ways that God was using that, even just because of language barrier, I might have been a little bit more unaware of how God was using some of those things. But we got to the second day, and I was like, all right, get it back together. We went out in teams of 4, and so we'd have like 4 of us and our translator and a couple church members, and we're in these remote villages, and so we go into our first home, and I'm like, we pray before we go in there. By the way, I think that's a really important part of sharing our faith is like, it's not us, and so if it's not us, we need to ask God to give us what we need to say in those moments. So we go into this house, and meet this lady, and she's got a young daughter, super sweet, around the age of my daughter. So I was like, oh, this is like a good connection. She had a young son. I think he was like right around like 15 months or something. And but he was sleeping, and these homes are very small, so you kind of see everything. And he was sleeping, and I was like, oh, you have a son? And she was like, yeah. And she went and woke him up. And I was like, oh man,
Let's go.
This is going to be a lot harder now. But she wakes him up, and we're midway through. We've kind of talked for a while, got to know her. She wasn't a believer. She didn't have faith, but she was interested in hearing about it. And we had put together the water filter, showed her how to use it, and then we're kind of sharing the gospel with her at this point. Using the water filter as kind of a tool to describe what Jesus does in our lives. And we're kind of getting like pretty deep into the gospel. She's engaged, and all of a sudden, like in the middle of talking, like I reach to grab something, and I turn around, and she got the baby, and I see her shirt coming up, and I was like, I'm gonna keep grabbing stuff. And I realized she was getting ready to breastfeed, but like I don't know culturally what's
that's very fun.
Yeah, so like, you know,
fairly normal.
She's yeah, and I was like, I kind of look at the interpreter because I'm like, is it inappropriate for me to continue talking to her? Is this okay? Like, and everybody's just kind of there. So, and she's still engaged. I'm like, all right, we're going to talk about Jesus while you're doing this, and that's totally okay. Like, it's normal, it's natural, but I just wanted to make sure we're not like culturally in a bad spot. So I'm like telling her about Jesus, telling her about salvation, and I kind of get to that spot of like, hey, like, what does this mean to you? Like, would you like to experience this in your life?
And all you hear is the baby gulping.
Oh no! Here's what happens. At that time is when the baby's done, and so I'm looking at her eye to eye, and that's when she pulls up her shirt and takes the baby down, I'm latching, and I'm just like, just keep eye contact, because I'm like, I can't, like, and I'm just like, just keep translating for me. We're just going to continue going. And like, what's funny is like, you know, and I know some people are like, oh, John, grow up, whatever. Like, it was like, I was uncomfortable, at least. I was uncomfortable. And yet she made a profession of faith that day. Nice. She prayed to receive Christ. And I laughed at it later because I thought, man, like, this was my most uncomfortable situation. This was like where I was like, what's happening? Like, why'd you wake up the baby? And like, now, like, I don't know if I'm appropriately supposed to be talking to you. And I'm just like, yes. And yet God used like my most uncomfortable home there to lead somebody to salvation. And I share that story, one, because I found it pretty amusing, but two, because I think sometimes we gauge what we're doing based on, were we comfortable? Like, did we feel good about it? As opposed to, is God using it? And so God used that one. And I'm not saying he didn't use every other home that we went into, but that one really stood out to me of like, it was in the midst of like my most uncomfortable that God did one of the coolest stories that I got to experience there.
Wow. It's good. Dale?
And when you were talking, when you first started, it reminded me of, you actually said it, and the challenge, so each year when we go on these mission trips, we present challenges to deal with. To our team, to help us grow spiritually while we're on this trip. Because though we are going for the other people, we also want to grow ourselves and like become closer with God. And the challenge this year was looking at, we're all going nervous because we're all going to spread the gospel to people we've never met. And to a point that you made in a sermon about, still being nervous even though you've been in ministry that long. Absolutely. I think that's a beautiful thing, that the vulnerability there of like, man, people that have been sharing the gospel for years, still you get nervous in sharing it because it's like, well, what if it doesn't grow? What if it doesn't take in well? And sometimes we forget that that's not our job. Yeah. And so that was one of the things we really picked up on, is this is not our job. And part of that was saying, hey, I want us to examine the words that we are using and trust God that He will give us the words. So many times in Scripture, God says, don't worry about it. I'll give you the words. When you need the words, I'll give them to you. And so that was our challenge in going into this, was like, all right, look for the ways that God has given you the words.
You have a Bible right there. You want to share?
I do. And actually, this comes into what I was about to say. So in the first day that we were there, the first house I shared with, even though the guy in the beginning was like, how long is this going to take? It ended up becoming a very beautiful moment, because halfway through our conversation, just like talking about random stuff, I mean, he spoke relatively decent English.
Okay.
And so, we had a translator as well, but we mostly laughed at me because, that's what I'm good
Why
at.
not?
Yeah. And so we sat around and talked for a little while, and then his mom walked in about halfway through, and she was in her 70s, if I remember correct, and she was a super sweet lady. But it's funny because they're always so straight faced. You don't know if they want you there, don't want you there, if they're happy, not happy.
Yeah.
It takes some getting used to.
There are some people like that in our congregation. Anyway, you have to.
Don't call names.
You just have to gauge. That's it.
Well, I also have heard, even over this past trip, that like sometimes I look like that apparently, and
yes.
I'm a little rough around the edges.
That was the name I mentioned.
That's right.
So
That's right.
I'll take it for this. For this. But so just the same though, like trying to gauge, like, is this something like they even care about? Well, also just trying to be personal with them and like, have conversations. And as I was going through the gospel with them, because they were, I was very blunt with them. It's just like, hey, if today ends and you're not here tomorrow, where do you think you're going to be? And it was interesting because their answer was what it wasn't one that I really expected. I kind of knew that we were going and they were going to be these people, but like I was more expectant that either they were going to be unchurched and unbelieving, or they were going to be churched and believing. And to fall kind of in the middle of like churched and yet believing, but with skewed views, that was kind of like, and even knowing it was still like, this is a hurdle of trying to like, how do I figure out how to share it with you? And so then I'd simply say like, hey, can I share with you what I believe? Because I didn't want to demean what they already thought they believed, and yet I also wanted them to understand, like, hey, I want you to hear and we would get to this. So this, if you can't see it, this is it's called a Revive Bible. It's one of my favorite tools that I found in looking through tools for this trip, and it'll take you through the Roman road in just the easiest way of sharing. It's one of the ways that we share our faith is through the gospel in the Word of God. And that's one of the things we want to be very careful of.
If you're not watching this, so the Bible has these little tabs, and if you it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and as you go to them, it gives you scripture that kind of walks through some of the significant points of the gospel, right? That everyone has sin, what sin has done to us, what Jesus came to do, and what is offered in salvation and how we respond to it. So it has these kind of tabs you can kind of quick flip to them, and has the scriptures that are significant to that story highlighted for you. So it is a neat tool. It's good.
Yeah, and it worked really well with the filters because the filters were designed to kind of work with the Romans Road along with some other extra scriptures in there. And as I was reading to him, though, I got to number 4, which is for by grace, Ephesians 2, chapter 2, verse 8. And it says, for by grace you have been given, or you've been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is a gift of God, not as a result of works. And God, it was beautiful because God just like laid on my heart, like, hey, this is a gift. And the problem with the works is it's not a gift. So if we are judged based off our works, it is a wage. And it says very clearly, if you go back to Romans 3, 23, right? Yep. Romans 3, 23, the wage that we are owed is death. And so, like, I was able to point at this gift that we're giving them, this water filter.
Sorry, Romans 6:23.
6:23. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Romans 3:23 is fall. I've seen the fall short.
You're right. Sorry.
I made a mistake. I had to.
Yeah. Well, I let you. I ran with you. I ran with you on that mistake.
Yeah, you're good, you're good.
Anyway, so
Right now, it's like watching a tennis match.
But anyways, it was just like the way that God had spoke to me, and just off the bat, and like it kind of stuck with me for the rest of the time because we ended up with so many different houses that were just like this. And the lady, as we prayed with her, broke down sobbing, and it was a beautiful moment of like recognizing like this is a gift and not something that I have to worry about because being older like she was, like there is a realistic understanding that like I'm not promised every day from here out. And so it was beautiful just getting to share that gift with her and then just hearing God speak.
I love that. That's good. There's something you said when you were having conversations with the guy, and John alluded to it too a little bit, and I want to bring it out. I think that's where, if you're listening to this, it can be easy to say, okay, they did the trip. This is great, and they have so many more stories to share. But there's something you guys mentioned, and it was you didn't want to destroy or throw kind of throw stones at what they believed.
Right.
You want to affirm their belief, aka just validate, like affirm what they were believing, what they have already said to you guys. But you also want to share what is essential, what is true.
Well,
Right.
So how are different ways that we can do that?
I think that one of the things that, so obviously the U.S. we're in a very different culture, and the number one thing that I think we need to do to be able to share our faith is build relationships with people. Earn the right to speak. And what, Dale kind of mentioned it in his story, I kind of mentioned it just kind of in passing. The number one thing that we did when we got to homes was just got to know people.
Yeah.
It wasn't, hey, we're here to tell you about Jesus. It was, hey, like, we love your village, beautiful weather, you have flowers and things, tell me about this. And we would just try to get to know them.
Amazing coffee.
Yeah, talk, whatever it was. Also, like, there were some great conversation starters because there's literally a volcano like within eyesight that erupts every 10 to 15 minutes.
Right.
We got some cool pictures of it. It was pretty neat, like seeing a volcano just, and also a little bit nerve-wracking.
Yeah, we're not making it home, y'all.
That's right. We're like, when's the big one?
Yeah.
But we would just try to like kind of build relationships, get to know people, and I think that's something that we really can't take over into our culture or any culture. Realistically, is just get to know people, but not just stopping there. One of the questions that we would ask people, or we would try to get to, was like, "Hey, like, tell me your story," and that was one of the things that helped me out a lot, was just taking time to listen to somebody's story. And there were some who said, like, I don't believe, and I'm, I don't know. And that opened up opportunity where instead of it's just like, I'm coming in telling you all the things, some of the people, they were genuinely, they wanted to know. Like they were just open to hearing. If people did have a belief system, we got an opportunity to hear it. And I think that's, if nothing else, a sign of respect of like, if I'm going to ask somebody to hear my thoughts, I need to hear their thoughts.
Right.
And actually, I think what happens is they're usually more interested to hear my thoughts if I take time to hear their thoughts, especially if I take time to hear their thoughts first. Not in a place of like, hey, let me prove you wrong. Let me win an argument. This isn't about winning an argument. This is about offering good news, offering a gift. And that's one of the things that, as Dale was talking, that jumped out at me that I kind of used a tool that I was able to kind of put in my arsenal. This idea that the gospel is a gift. It's not forced upon us, and we can say no to it. Right. And so I'm not going to force anybody. I'm not going to try to like make anybody become a believer. But it is offered, and God has offered it to us.
Yeah. And
you can say no.
Right.
And so, understanding the value of starting by hearing people's stories. And I think as we talk about different tools, like this Bible is useful as is. I found it very useful there. It might not be the tool that's going to reach my neighbor.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if somebody comes in, a lot of the people we're talking to had a general confidence in the Bible.
Right.
So it was very useful to take the Bible and say, here's what the Bible says.
Right.
Well, if I run into somebody who doesn't believe the Bible at all, and I'm like, here's what the Bible says, they're going to be like, I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think it's important that we don't just say, okay, here's the way to share the gospel.
Right.
There are different ways and different approaches that we're going to need to take depending on the situation. And the more we know these different approaches that we can take, sometimes story-based, sharing my story, sometimes scripture-based, walking through this, sometimes using the analogies that God kind of built into the world, just looking at the world around us. We think of Romans 1 where it kind of talks about God displayed himself in creation. And so I think that as we kind of look at these different ways to share the gospel, it's building a sense of not going into every conversation saying, okay, here's the spiel,
right.
here's the sales tactic,
right.
But instead, here's the truth, and what does this situation call for?
You know, I view evangelism, I used to view it this way, that it had to be a conversation where you, kind of like when your parents talk to you and they say, okay, let's talk about the birds and bees. And there's one talk, and that's it.
Are we getting into that?
No. But oftentimes, at least in this context in America, I think the best way to go about evangelism is having multiple conversations, multiple follow-ups.
Yeah, that's good.
So when we talk about this, and then we think about, okay, what is it like when we say go to our mission field, and it's that coworker, it's that neighbor, it's that person. Like, is it one talk? Or when we have those follow-up conversations, should there be something to those conversations? And what should we expect from those?
No, I think that's a really good point, because maybe something that we've really, I don't even know if we've mentioned. If we have, we've really just kind of glossed past it. We weren't there alone.
No, the church.
We were there with a local church who had built relationships prior to us going, and we're going to continue in these relationships after. So some people said no, it's okay. The local church, and like our job wasn't to make people say yes. Our job was to offer something from a different perspective.
Right.
But the local church was going to follow up with every single person that we talked to, reach back out. I had the privilege of walking around with the pastor of the church that we were with during the majority of the week. And he walked around with us one of the mornings. Great guy. He's been at the church for about 3 months.
You just like him because he has the same name as you.
It doesn't hurt that his name was Jonathan.
There you go. It's actually Jonathan, but
really?
It has no H in it. But pretty close.
I'll take it. I would joke about like, look, we're just exactly the same. Except he had really, really good hair. I was like, I want his hair.
He's been there for 3 months.
Yeah. Sorry.
So the stress has got to.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. My hair was black. My hair was still black and like all there when I was here 3 months. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Now you get this. That's right. This will be him in a few years. But walking around with him, man, one, I was so encouraged for that community in that church. This guy, he had such a heart for Jesus. It was evident in him and his wife. They had 2 young children. My wife, Kristen, she got to walk around with the pastor's wife a number of occasions. Their heart for Jesus and their heart for the community was so evident. And so when I was walking around with him in particular, I was able to kind of when we were finishing up with each house, just make sure we're like, hey, do you know this guy? And like he's here for you, and we're going to be gone at the end of the week, but this church is here for you. And I would ask him to pray over the families and pray for them, and we would leave notes for, even if he wasn't the one with us, we would leave notes about kind of what we experienced in each home, so that he had opportunity, not just him, that the church as a whole had opportunity to follow up, to continue building these relationships, to continue more conversations beyond what we did. Because even if somebody did get to a place of salvation, the story doesn't stop there. Our job is not just for people to get saved, but people to be discipled.
Yeah.
And so like we can come back and be like, oh, people got saved.
10 people.
Right. And then if we don't have the beauty of, and they now have a local church there to grow together with, to be discipled together with, so that they, the hope is not just they get saved, but they can share it with their families. Even when we were going into people's homes that were believers, we would still share, like, hey, here's a way to kind of think about the gospel using this filter that we brought to you. And then also just, hey, we love you, and we just enjoy getting to bless your life with clean water, and something that we so easily take for granted. So I think the value of the local church, the value of this follow-up conversation, so important.
And just to brag on him even further, because I loved the way that he dealt with, because honestly, I'm not going to name names, but I have done volunteer work for churches where in the volunteer work, the pastor didn't even show up here in the States. And it's like, man, so to go over there, and he ended up joining us one morning as well. And we ended up going to this house where they had some really hard times, and it pulled them away from the church. They had previously been members of a church, really just some deaths in the family and such like that. And one of our people got an awesome opportunity to share their story in it. And it was a beautiful moment of, like, they didn't really make any professions or anything like that. It wasn't like that, but it was a heartwarming moment of recognizing that even sometimes as a believer there are hard times and troubles, and finding out that, like, you're not alone in this. You're not the only person is experiencing bad times. It doesn't mean that God's not real. It doesn't mean that God's not good. It just means that it's not what you think it is. And he was there with us in that moment, so we were able to kind of help create that connection. And the beautiful part about it is the husband wasn't there in the beginning, and he walked in, and I asked the lady, I was like, well, is your husband around? And she's like, oh, he's around here somewhere. And the pastor just disappeared, and I was like, that's weird. And next thing I know, he shows back up with the husband. He has gone and found the husband, like brought the husband, and he's like, you're here, we want you to be part of this too. And I was like, dude, that's awesome. And so we, he got to be a part of that conversation. And at the end of it, I was just like, man, this is, it sounds like y'all could really use some encouragement and support. And they have a church around the corner. And he really got in there on it, and it was beautiful because he really cared. And to the point of, then we accidentally forgot to leave a Bible there with him. And I was like, man, look at God go. So I went to the pastor and I was like, hey, we forgot to leave a Bible at the house. We know that you're looking for an opportunity to go back. Here's the Bible.
Yeah.
Now you have an opportunity to go back in, check back in, and it's an easy opening.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay, so when we think about this topic, if I'm listening to this, my initial thing is, okay, now, what are some additional resources that I could have? How do I research evangelism? Or is there a simple step? Is there something I can go to? How does it look for me to share this with my neighbor? I don't know what it looks like. So what's the next step I can take?
It's the good news about the battle that has already been won. So I think the first place to start is, how has the battle been won in your life? Like, the battle has been won, and that's, and so knowing it scripturally, to John's point earlier, like here in the States, we have to develop more of a relationship. There we even started with a relationship. That was a very important part of it. Yeah. Spending time, not trying to run out. Here it's a lot harder because people don't just invite you into their house. They don't have a need that's easy to get us in the door. Mm-hmm. There they have a need that gets us in the door, that gets us a foot in. And so for here, you're spending a lot more time relational. Well, one of the biggest things relational to do is share with them your life, your story. What did God do for you? How's your battle been won?
I think that sense of my life before Christ, how I encountered him, the difference that it has made in me, and what it looks like now. I think that's a simple way of kind of thinking of our story: before, the approach, and after. And when kind of thinking of the biblical narrative, there's not one perfect way to do it, but what I generally, my mind kind of goes through the process of creation, fall, redemption, restoration. So God created everything perfectly. He loves us. He desires us. He cares about us. Sin entered the world. We all experience it. We have all fallen short. Redemption, that Jesus created this way, not to just ignore sin, but to take on the punishment of sin. And then restoration, that when we receive him in faith, when we surrender our hearts and our lives to him, that he restores us to what we were created for in the first place, a right relationship with him. So that's kind of, I'm probably talking really quietly, so if that, hopefully that wasn't too quiet for but I think that those are some good ways to think about it. What about you? What's kind of been your helps or things that you found useful?
You guys, it comes down to, at least for me, what I see, and it's affirming their story, and then sharing your conclusion. So, I mean, Dale mentioned it, like the battles in your life, and I think that's the fear, especially when you see it. And like, I've been on domestic trips, not international yet, but domestic trips and those things, and it comes down to, okay, like, is this victory actually official for me? You know, like you say, like, okay, like there's a food that you tried versus a food that you haven't tried yet, and then like there's a difference between whether you experienced it or not.
Right.
And in evangelism, it kind of actually tests you to see, wait a minute, is this really true for me or not?
That's good.
So like when I share with people, like it has to be first true. It has to be like I experienced it first. I encountered it. Like there has been a change. But if you haven't, and that's why I encourage our church, like think about those victories. Where has God brought you out of? Where has he brought you from? And you can see that your story matters too. That God wants to use it for his glory.
Yeah, so, I think that, like as you described that, even just the value of asking questions, asking people their thoughts, their perspectives. They might be wrong, but hearing, and oftentimes I think the more questions we ask, and not to trap people, but sometimes we can ask questions and we realize, okay, hey, earlier you said this, and you also said this, and like maybe those things don't mesh so well. Like how do you? What is your perspective on that? Because a lot of people, they have this belief over here, this belief over here, this belief over here, this belief over here, and when they actually take time to like try to mesh them together, they don't always mesh so well. And helping them to see that, not in an aggressive way, but in a loving way, to see like, hey, like I don't know if like these things go together. I think one of the other questions, it is so easy to just overlook the value of asking, is when we do have the opportunity to share the gospel, just asking, like, is this something you want to experience for yourself? Yeah. That my moment of surrender was when somebody just asked me, is this something you want to experience for yourself? You know, because otherwise it's almost like describing a cake to somebody. Like if somebody comes into your home, you're like, oh, I got this cake and it's delicious and it's wonderful and it's awesome. And if we just like tell somebody all about it, but we don't like, would you like a piece? Right. And I think sometimes
I'm watching my calendar.
We're afraid. We're afraid of asking. The last thing I kind of want to point out is we also never know who's listening.
Right.
It's not always. Sometimes we think we're there for one reason, and we're actually there for another reason, or we think it's supposed to be this timing, and God has a different timing in mind. Dale had a story, and I'll let him share it. That like he thought he was at a house for one reason, and God ended up using it in a different way.
Yeah. So we ended up at this house on the last day, and it was funny because the lady from the church that had been with us all week, sweet woman, spoke fairly decent English, and we were giving her the opportunity to show how well she could do in translating from English to Spanish.
Okay.
And so because we had gotten to know her through the week, we were able to have the most patience there. And so we got to this house, and she was translating for us. And what I heard from her translation was that there's a woman, an older woman, a younger girl who was, I was very confused about her age because, and through the translation, I thought she was married to the guy. Come to find out, she was actually just the girlfriend of that guy's son, which made way more sense age-wise.
Yeah.
But either way, I was under the impression that the two women, were already saved in parts of the church. One was part of the church we were with, and one was part of another church. And the guy was just unchurched and a non-believer. And so we get to talking to them, and we're sharing with them. We get the opportunity to share the gospel with them. And both of these ladies are there. We kind of get to the end, and honestly, I thought he had made the decision to like follow Jesus, and so like we're kind of praying with him for that, not having him repeat anything, but just kind of praying with him for that. And then one of my team members was like, "So has this made a difference in your life?" And he's like, "I don't know, And I was like, "Okay, that was very confusing."
A dud.
And so
thought he was getting saved and he wasn't.
Yeah, I was just like, so I impressed upon him the importance of the decision, obviously. And he's like, well, I got in an accident not too long ago and almost died. It's like, if you had died, you would not get the opportunity to make this choice. So you just need to know that this choice is a very important choice. And I was ready to leave it there because it's not our job to force them into making a decision.
Right.
We're just there planting seeds. And I'm done. The other girls, they're church members, so I'm like, they've listened to the gospel. They're also evangelical church, which is kind of the way they distinctively change the difference. You have Catholic and evangelical. So I'm kind of done. And as we're like kind of getting ready to leave, one of the ladies from the church says, "Well, she's not a believer either," talking about the young girl. And I'm like, "I thought you told me she goes to church." She's been standing there the whole time.
Wow.
And so we look over at her and we're like, "Okay, well, you've been listening. Like, what's your thoughts? Like, is this something that sounds like something you want?" And she was like, "Yes." And I was like, "Okay." So this entire time I'm thinking I'm sharing the gospel with this guy. And meanwhile, like, it's the girl.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, it ended up being a really beautiful moment. So we did actually end up praying with her. Because I was like, I want to make sure that I'm not confused about this one. So I'm like, I'm going to help you pray through this just to be sure this is actually what we're talking about now.
But, I love that because you thought you were there for one reason and God had something different in store. And
it was.
Before the episode, we were kind of talking about, like, how do we define success? And I think success is defined in obedience.
Yeah.
It's in obedience.
Yeah.
Are we obedient to share what God has led us to share? Are we willing to be uncomfortable for the sake of the gospel? Because it is good news. And if we're running to share this victory, then sometimes we're going to be out of breath. We're going to be worn out. But man, the battle has been won already.
That's right.
We're just getting to invite people to the victory party.
That's right.
It's good. It's really good. Beautiful. Thanks, guys. All right, guys. Life Church, you know the drill. Please go to your mission field.